Hi, everybody. It's Jeff Lifson, and the gentleman at the bottom of the screen here, or in whatever format it appears to you, transparency is important these days, is a good friend of mine, but he's also a very famous face, name, and most importantly, voice in the horse racing industry. He's Ryan Mahan, and he has jumped over the number of hoops and crawled through the valley of death, so to speak. And now we're on together on a Zoom call to have a nice conversation to share with our West Point partners. Ryan, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thank you.
And yes, that's my dog in the background. Isn't it lovely doing all these Zooms from our kitchens and our living rooms and our backyards, so to speak? As I said, if you don't recognize the name per se or the face, about anybody who's ever been involved with racing is going to recognize the dulcet tones of Ryan Mahan. He's been right there in the middle of things as head auctioneer when not just our team, but any team is successfully winning the final bid to collect a horse. But Terry, of course, and Ryan have a long history together, not necessarily as adversaries and certainly not working together, but they're in the same room and they create history together. Here's a little taste from last September when we were lucky enough to buy a Son of Justify out of a mare.
50, 50 million, 350, at a million, 350, 50, and the 50, 50, and the bids in front though, million, 354, million, 354, 350, 450, million, 450, for their tough, million, 450.
The only other thing I wanted to ask you about, you've been, the voice of some pretty important horses going through the ring, including Zenyatta. Let me tell a little story about that. Our bloodstock agent, David Ngordo, has been with us for about 5 years, but evidently David tells this story publicly that he was surprised to get Zenyatta for, I don't know, like 60,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And at one point he walked over to double check when she was leaving the ring that he had bid on the right horse. Does that happen very often in your world, Ryan, where somebody is checking with you or the bid spotters to make sure?
It does. It's so fast paced. It's confusing. It's challenging. And there are times certainly when people think, I was going to go to 100 and we're stopped at 30. What have I missed? Is there a veterinary report I missed? Or there's so many ways that people just become confused, and that was a darn good one to get confused over.
Yeah, no kidding. I would say so. Are there times when you are surprised? I mean, dramatically surprised, because I know you do your homework before. Certainly the higher profile horses in the first 5 or 6 days of the sale, like the Keeneland sale, the horse is going in. Are you surprised sometimes when the price is either way above or way below what you had thought would be the range?
Yeah, sure. There's a great example about 3 years ago, and I was getting off the auction stand, and I'm going to throw some names up here to you.
Okay.
And I just looked at this filly and I thought, my goodness, this filly's beautiful. She had virtually no pedigree. And I saw Baffert walk by, and you could tell he had the same thing. So he stops against the wall. This is at Ocala. And there's somebody bidding against him, and it looked like a $5,000 or $6,000 horse. Baffert bids 8, 10, 12, 15. Now we're at 60. So Baffert's looking down, says, "Who in the world is bidding against me? Who is that old lady bidding against me?" Turned around, it was Steve Asmussen when he had the longer hair. And Baffert looks at me and he says, "And she's got a damn beard." So Baffert ended up with her.
Well, that's just a tiny slice of what I know in the decades that you've been involved with the auctions that can go, they can be dramatic. They can be at the tail end of, for example, the Keeneland sale, very, sort of meat and potatoes, everyday business. And they can be, as you just pointed out, pretty hilarious. I want to thank you for joining us. We wanted to do a little preamble and just kind of reel people in here. But there's a lot of ground to cover. So I wanted to see if I can start off sort of at the beginning, or relatively at the beginning in your illustrious career, and then we'll work work in whatever direction it goes after that. One of the people I wanted to mention that I'm sure was an influence in your life is your stepfather, the world famous Dr. Robert Copeland,
Right.
who was really a pioneer in equine surgery. He's, I mean, he's a miraculous individual. I know him more specifically from seeing him around the racetrack and in Dallas Stewart's office all the time, and in his barn when he was a little younger. He used to come over all the time. He was a fixture in this industry and touched so many of the great operations of the time. What are some of the highlights of your relationship with your stepfather that stuck with you from growing up around, what he was doing on a day in, day out basis?
Yeah, he was primarily a racetrack practitioner and surgeon. And I can remember years and years ago, this will certainly date me. We were in Chicago, and Buck Passer just broken the world record in the mile. And we went back the next day to see the horse, and Eddie Neloy, he said, "Hold on, Doc." He said, they're the blacksmith's with you now. So he takes his shoes off, throws them in the muck pit. At 13 years old, I go get him out of the muck pit thinking, these are Buck Passer shoes that just broke the world record in the mile. And he said, "Well, they're in the muck pit." So he takes them and he throws them back in there. Little did I know, he really didn't do that. And about a week later, they were on a walnut board with in these shoes, Buck Passer is the fastest horse in the world.
Oh, I love it.
That's a great memory of Bob, and talked to him yesterday, and he's 95 and still very, very spry.
He's one of those individuals that I know people like Dallas Stewart, well-known trainers in the business, and I'm sure other equine practitioners and surgeons have, well, they've not just looked up to him, but they've called him up for counsel and advice, sometimes when it's just wanting to hear a wise voice. Who's that person that has been like that for you, sort of growing up in the industry?
Absolutely. He, my mother passed away in April, and we had a celebration for it at my house, and it looked like Hall of Fame for trainers and veterinarians just all over the house. It was great to see. Dallas, of course, was there. Wayne was there. Todd Fletcher was there. And he's meant a lot to a lot of young people and not so young, like Wayne. They're great friends.
They really are. And one of the things that I think that some of the great veterinarians will probably carry to their grave, many of the secrets of some of these great racehorses over the years. And I don't mean anything nefarious, but just little things, little nagging things that you had to work through Derby week, or that might have set you back and not allowed you to get into the Derby that one race day. But through their efforts and through their really perseverance, working, almost hour on the hour, they managed to get a horse, through something minor, but necessarily needed their help. Do you have any stories like that? I'm sure Doc Copeland was involved in things like that over the years.
Well, when I was in college at UK, I would go with him especially Derby week. I would just basically take that week off. We'd leave Lexington at 3:30 in the morning, and Secretariat, as you may have heard this story, had an abscess in his lip. And Eddie Sweat said, "Doc, I can't put a bit in his mouth." So he missed a work. It got worse. And now it's Tuesday. We're at Churchill at 4:00. And Eddie, is he getting any better at all? "Doc, he didn't eat." Wow, now we really got a problem. The next conversation was going to be with Lucian Lauren to scratch the horse, frankly, because he couldn't get near his face. So Doc said, "Okay, hot compress on 30 minutes, off 30 minutes, on 30 minutes, off 30 minutes. He said, "Well, how long?" He said, "All day."
Oof.
We go Thursday morning before the Derby. I'm holding one side of Secretariat. Eddie's holding the other. And it was the most surreal, and I hate that word, experience I've ever seen. Rolled his lip up. The abscess drops out. And it literally it was like a cotton ball that just barely made it. And when it hit the straw, it was like an explosion. And treated it. And he went right to his feed tub. And 3 days later, he became Secretariat.
I have heard snippets of that story, but not the direct one. So yeah, you've actually done me a huge favor today
I
in
was right there.
filling in the blanks. What was Secretariat like as a patient, or just to be around in the stall from your experience?
Lucian made a very large mistake the day after the Derby, and when he was doing an interview, he handed Secretariat to me. And Secretariat was fairly tough. The last person you would want to hand Secretariat to, Horse of the Year, of course, was me. I was the most nervous guy in the world, grazing Secretariat the day after the Derby. It was horrible. He's throwing his head and dancing around with, oh my, please, somebody get this horse.
Please take the shank, anyone. Take the shank.
Please.
What about the experience that you may have had with Doc Copeland in terms of his participation in the Keeneland Inspection Committee, which I know you have taken that mantle, maybe not him specifically, but you've been involved in the inspection committee. And for people that don't realize this, yes, people who are thinking about buying these horses, yes, we look at the horse's conformation, how they walk, et cetera. But Keeneland's got a crew that goes out long before the sale starts in the summertime and looks over all those horses.
They do. They look at probably 3,000 horses.
Yeah. What did you learn from doing that with Doc Copeland and, looking at the Calumet and the Overbrook Farm horses that he was so associated with? What are some of the principles that you learned at that time from the best of the best?
Bob was not on the Keeneland inspection team, but I looked at a lot of horses with him coming up before I was on the inspection team.
Right.
And everybody's got their kind of horse, and his kind of horse, he was a bit in front of the curve, I think, with that. He was, more shoulder and neck and this. And, I think back then veterinarians were more orthopedic guys, and, they look at knees and ankles. And Bob was kind of the first one to say, okay, we can live with this or that, but this is what we really want. This is the picture.
What I wanted to throw in is that I know that you've been close over the years to a number of people on that inspection team, including the late Dr. Alan Lavin. And one of the things that my wife shared with me, having been invited to one of those meetings after you all sort of went to the farms and came back that day and shared notes, is that you all didn't give out many strong grades. Like, if you were a B, that was something special. Have you ever been a part of anything bigger than a B?
Yeah, a couple. I got to say, we had a few, Doc Lavin, who was maybe the funniest human being I've ever been around. If he would see a really, really good horse, he would ask the farm manager, is he getting any better? And of course, he confused everybody. But that was Doc. He was just one of the brightest guys, and what a part of the Keeneland crew he was.
Do you still go out on the inspections as chief auctioneer now, as the head auctioneer and the head of the team?
I quit doing that a couple of years ago. But I go out to the bigger farms, I'll do those, but I don't do the everyday where it's 2 horses here, 3 there, drive 45 minutes, 1 there. So I do the big farms.
What's your preparation like then, Ryan, when you arrive at the sales grounds? And understandably, it's not like you're flying in from California or Oklahoma or some of the places where a number of the team members may live and are coming in for that marathon session, for example, at Keeneland or for OBS or whatever. What are what's your preparation look like before the microphone goes on and before the first horse comes through the ring?
Yeah, it's hard to articulate that because it's kind of 12 months a year. I look at myself not really as an auctioneer, but a horse guy that talks fast. I don't do car sales. I don't do cattle sales. And so it's every day for me. I mean, I've got horses on the farm here. We had 2 foals last night. So it's something that's just been in my blood for 60 years now. And so the preparation starts all year. And right before the sale, and that's fair enough. I will look at as many horses on the grounds as I can. I've seen a bunch at the farm. So I kind of carry my notes through. I think the most important part is the relationship that I have with the owners, farm managers, because there's conversation literally twice a week with those guys and saying, man, that, that Tapit's really getting better if you can. So I think that's a big part is relationship. And I know they're going to tell me the truth because we're all kind of partners in these horses.
That's important. It really is, because there's an awful lot of trust. It's almost like they are entrusting their baby with you to do your very best in the what? What's the average for the first week of the Keeneland or the OBS sales, the top horses? What's the average amount of time? A minute 30?
Yeah, minute 20. Yeah. So it's, that can be daunting when you think you take 2 years of work and they kind of put it in our lap to say, do the best you can. And you try to put the horse in the very best light. We're so fortunate at Keeneland and in Ocala where I do that sale, and back in the day with Barrett's and the Canadian sale at Woodbine, that we have such a good crew. And those guys, it's their passion too, whether it's John Henderson or Kurt Becker, they're up with that all day, every day. And I think they garner the trust of our partners, I like to call them.
I know you did the formal part of your education as far as the announcing side of the business, and you studied at it. You went to auctioneer school in Indiana, from what I understand. But who did you want to pattern yourself after? And maybe it wasn't even an auctioneer, but it was just sort of a voice, an authoritative voice that deals with the public. Who were some of your idols growing up?
I'm glad you asked that. And that would be Tom Hammond. In the early days, we traveled a lot, and we would get, I would take a few diversionary trails and go to a basketball game with him. And, he comported himself in such a way. He was so prepared for everything. He was the first guy that did the charts for the NFL and the SEC basketball. And he always said, I don't do it to sound good. I just don't want to look bad. And he became so prepared. And that's where I learned that, to tell you the truth.
I tell you what, Ryan, Tom owns a few horses with us, in partnership.
I know that.
And I'm blessed enough to call him periodically, mostly when I say, hey, Tom, this is a horse that we bought. Maybe you and your crew would want to get involved. And invariably, when he answers the phone, you're like, dang, that's a really good sounding voice. You have a voice for announcing, my friend.
And I don't care what the problem is. He makes it sound like it's okay. Everything's okay. And I sat with him on the auction stand probably 15 years and just learned a lot from him of how this really should work. And it should be elegant, yet it's got to be fast paced. And he was great at that.
Well, he's a gentleman beyond that. And that's something I think that a lot of people recognize in the way that you've conducted your business with Keeneland over the years. I'm bouncing around a little bit, and I will get to one specific auction that I think everybody should hear a little bit about. But in terms of being, a good person, a gentleman, a person who respects all the parties that are involved in the auction process, tell me a little bit about sort of like, you can't choose sides, really, can you? I mean, even though you're there first and foremost to sell horses, but I know that the buyers have a healthier amount of respect for you too. So you must not have ticked any of those off over the years, or tried desperately not to. How is that?
You tried desperately not to.
Yeah.
But no, I've had my moments, certainly. But I think to me it's all about integrity, whether it's for the seller or the buyer. We basically represent both. And I think, again, it is so fast paced. It is so global. And when people get confused, Bob Lewis was a great example. Bob loved to win races. He said, I love to win a betting battle even more. And he just bid with such authority. And then he just said, oh, my heart's pounding so bad. And I loved that his attitude was he really understood, if I want to bid, I'm going to have to bid. And we had one example a long time ago, and he bought a filly for $1.4 million. And a guy walked up and he said, Mr. Lewis, I was bidding against you in the back. I'd like to be your partner. And he didn't miss a beat. He said, oh my, I have a partner. Beverly, would you like to meet this gentleman? And that was just his style. He loved the business, and he was a great bidder, and he was a great seller of horses as well.
what's the most, or maybe you have a couple of examples of this, of your favorite moments of looking a buyer in the eye that you can actually see that's in front of you, and trying to, I don't know, cleverly, with imagination, coax that extra bit out of them, because it's an ego game typically, Ryan, and you got to find their ego points, correct?
Yeah, my favorite story with that, it's almost like I wrote this one for you. Years ago, there was a horse that had a 499 reserve, really a nice filly, and I thought she'd blow past that, and she didn't. And we virtually had no bids. So we get to 400,000, and Wayne Hughes bids. Well, coming to work that day, there's a huge sign for Public Storage Warehouse that said, "Call us for your needs, 1-800-44-STORE." So I have to bid 450. Would he give 500? No, we're done. So I looked at John Henderson. I said, pick up the phone. This is over the microphone, of course. Pick up the phone, dial 1-800-44-STORE. Tell them we need more money over here. Well, Wayne started laughing, bid, and it was really a good filly. So everybody went in that one, but he still talked about that.
I love that. That's a fantastic story. Our own personal Ryan Mahan experience, and there've been a number of them, because Ryan knows when Terry's bidding, and sometimes when I'm close at hand, and gives us good-natured hard time, or at least good-natured encouragement to continue on in our quest. I remember we were bidding on a horse, and literally, Ryan, I think it was the last horse to go through the OBS ring a number of years ago. And it was a pretty strong battle, whomever was bidding against us. And we kept thinking that we were done. And then Ryan looked at us with almost deadpan and said, "My flight's not till tomorrow. We can keep doing this all night."
I'm in no hurry.
And interestingly enough, we kind of, we shrunk back a little bit, and the other person bought the horse. And I can't tell you whether it turned out to be a superstar or a dud or someplace in the middle. But what I remember the most was your charm and a very gentlemanly way of saying, "Guys, you're not going to get me to hammer this thing down until I'm sure you guys are exhausted and done."
It's a fun way to make a living, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. The one of the auctions that I think, most people in our business have been around for a little while remembers the farm auction, the iconic Calumet Farm in 1992, which was sold to, if I remember correctly, Ryan, that was the Heinrich de Fiakowski buy.
That is correct.
And there were about 5,000 people on hand. It was a historic moment, in some ways, kind of a bittersweet moment. What was that like for you that day? And did you come away with a keepsake tangibly or two, or a keepsake from a metaphorical perspective?
Honestly, both. It was a huge day, and the town, just the city of Lexington, was devastated that someone else would buy it that they didn't know who it was. And it was a court-ordered sale, as you'll recall. And in order to bid, you had to have a cashier's check for $500,000. Well, the story on the street was we had 20 of them. We had 5. And Mr. de Fiakowski had called me, and I didn't know him. And he said, he called and says, "I'm going to buy your farm." And I said, "Oh, that'd be great. It's next week, and you need a certified check for $500,000. He says, "No, I don't need that. You don't know who I am. I'm a friend of Ted Bassett." And I said, "Well, again, be that as it may, this is a court-ordered sale." Well, he said, "Well, maybe." So he did send it. He arrived literally 2 minutes. We were looking at the skies for his jet. And he finally showed up. And at the end of the sale, I said, "Mr. de Fiakowski, I would like to introduce you to the city of Lexington. They really want to meet you. Can you come to the auction stand?" He says, "I don't speak publicly." "Okay, what about if I interview you just for a moment, just so they can see you?" He said, "I will do that, but I won't speak." Well, of course, he got up on the auction stand, and off he went. "The fences will never be whiter. The grass shall never be greener."
It's
amazing. That was a 20-minute talk. But I did have some keepsakes. I bought a number of things at that sale, just like a tack trunk that I had. And then we forgot, Walt Robertson, my partner, we forgot there's a huge, big section of tree that had Calumet Farm on it that hung in the cupola. Well, as the sale's over, we looked up and saw it, and didn't sell it.
Oh my goodness.
So I brought it home with me. Well, about a year ago, and of course, it's been a long time. A year ago, it was hanging in my barn, and I called Eddie Kane. I said, I want to give this to Mr. Kelly. And he called back and he said, he doesn't want it. So we actually sold it last month at a charity sale for the thoroughbred charities. So it turned out to be a good story.
Well, what a neat story. And the fact that you had it those number of years and really understood that it was a gift to the industry or a gift to somebody that could possibly help some charitable organization.
Right.
That continues to put you in the you're a good egg category, Ryan Mahan. I'm wondering if you felt at that moment, with the winning bid going to Mr. DeFiakowski and the very public speech that he gave afterwards up there on the dais, what you thought was going to happen to Calumet, if Calumet was going to be okay, because there was certainly plenty of doubt about that at the time.
There was, and I had a great kinship because of Dr. Copeland. When he was at the Ohio State University, he would drive down and gallop horses there. That's how he learned to ride. And he broke a horse called Hillgale that turned out to be a Derby winner. I've got a great picture of him in my house holding Citation. So I had a kinship with Calumet, and I really wanted someone to really take care of it. And everybody has. It looks great.
I'm curious, over the years, both the auctioneers and certainly the bid spotters, because they're that one bit closer to the action. Those people have met with so many characters over the years, probably too many to recall in their entirety. But if you would share with me a couple of your most favorite characters when you lined up there as a bid spotter before you were an auctioneer, and as an auctioneer, that you knew you were in for a colorful evening or a colorful afternoon because they were there.
Yeah, that would probably be Jess Jackson. His first sale he came to was at Barrett's, and Tom Bachman, who was his neighbor and helped him, said, I'm bringing a guy to the sale today. This was a 2-day October sale. And he said he's going to buy a couple of mares. I said, great. I forgot about it. He bid on one for $18,000, didn't get it. $22,000, didn't get it, and left. Well, the next morning, Bachman calls and says, look, you need to start the sale an hour late. We're on our way, and we want to buy the second horse in the ring. I said, well, that's not going to happen. I can't do that. And I said, where are you now? He said, well, we're in Mr. Jackson's plane. Okay, a little bit of a light bulb went off there. And I said, well, you can land right next to Barrett's. There's an airport here. He goes, not this plane. Another light bulb went off. So we did delay maybe for 10 minutes. He did not buy the second horse. So I then got to kind of messing with Jess. And I said, you've almost come an embarrassment to me. And then he laughed and he said, you know what, maybe I should pick the price up a little bit. I said, what are your goals? He said, and I didn't know who he was. I had no idea what he did for a living, anything. He said, I want to have breakfast, and I want to look out my window and see some mares and foals. I said, okay, we can do that. So he bought one for $80,000, and that was that. The next day he called and he said, I think I'm going to move this up. How do you think I do that? I said, well, the biggest sale in the world is in November at Keeneland. I'll have FedEx a catalog to you. And I said, well, that'd be great, Jess, but you can't stop bidding. When I tell you to bid, you've got to bid. With a big grin, of course. He laughed. Well, the next time I saw him, he bid $1.2 million at Keeneland and didn't get it. To which I said, we're just never going to get along if you're not going to be more bold. And of course, he became Jess Jackson. And
yeah, the rest is history.
Absolutely. Along came Curlin and Rachel, and we became good friends.
I know that one of the gentlemen who has leaned on you from time to time, asked your counsel, and so many of us have, for whatever reason, because of the amount of, wonderful tentacles that you have spread across our great game, and the connections and the experiences that you've had. But one guy who's relied on you from time to time, and I never think he relies on anybody, is Mattress Mac, Mr. James McInvale. Tell me about that friendship and how it sprung up, and maybe a few anecdotal, interesting things that we need to know about the great Run Happy owner and marketer.
You're asking good questions. You're setting me up pretty well. My son went to Houston chasing a girl, actually, that he went to school with. And he said, there's a store down here called the Gallery Furniture. I said, yeah, I know about that. He goes, it's the biggest store you've ever seen. He said, it's crazy. So we walked in and I said, I want to introduce myself to Mac. So I walk into a salesman. I said, any chance Mr. McInvale's here? He said, he's always here. He's here 11 hours a day. I said, where's his office? He said, at the front door. That's him. He stands at the front door. So I walk in and TVG is on the whole wall. He said, that's on all day here. Watch races all day. It's like 20 feet wide. And he said, I know exactly who you are. He said, let's go have lunch. Well, they've got a cafeteria in this store that's free to everybody, huge cafeteria all day long. And he looked at my son and he said, you start to work tomorrow. My son said, I don't know anything about furniture. He said, you will. He said, what do you do? He said, I like marketing. He said, this will be your Harvard Business School then. My son was there for 2 years and he agrees that is the best education you can have. And he's in marketing now, my son, and he does, most of the big farms in the thoroughbred game.
He certainly does. And
he learned
right.
it all from Mattress Mac.
So has Mattress Mac ever called you up or talked to you after you got down from the podium at a sale, and given you one of these and wanted to know something a bit off the wall, at least in your
Not so
estimation?
much there. Jim's a pretty private guy, believe it or not.
Yeah.
He does most of his bidding on the phone.
Yeah.
He's occasionally there. I'll see him at the races, when at Keeneland, and we'll get together for 4 or 5 minutes. And that's about all the time you get with Mac. But he is the most intriguing guy, hardest working guy in the world, never sleeps apparently, and loves this business. He's very competitive, of course, and loves this industry.
You would have to think so, because like anybody else, he's seen his ups and downs, stuff that would, knock a lot of people to their knees and maybe knock some people out of the business. But he has continued to be an incredibly enthusiastic supporter of the game in so many different ways. And I know a lot of people admire that aspect of him. He's a no quit kind of guy. And
he is. I have great admiration for him.
Speaking of no quit, some bidders are absolutely no quit, but they're almost secretive. And I don't want to give you, I don't want to ask you for trade secrets, especially as we'll be there at Keeneland trying to buy some horses as well too. But what are some of the maybe 1 or 2 most memorable or unique ways that you've had people bid on horses while you've been, in the ring there?
Yeah, a lot of people, of course, don't want to be seen, so they'll come up with these schemes that have never worked. If my glasses are on, keep me in. If my hat's on, and then they can't remember, was it glasses on or glasses off? Years and years ago, Wayne Lucas comes to me and he said, I'm going to buy a filly 3 horses from now. I said, okay, Wayne, what do you want me to do? He said, when my pen is in my pocket, keep me in, but don't let anybody know I'm bidding. Well, he's out back. So I walk back to the bid spotter behind, and there goes the pen, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600,000. Pen's still there. He's not looking. He's looking everywhere but me. Young man comes up for an autograph, takes his pen, pen's gone. So now I'm, Wayne, nothing. Here comes the pen back. Pen goes back in. I'm yelling, Wayne, we're now at 1,000,001. Finally, we get to 1,000,002. Boom, knock it down in the back. And I point to Wayne, that's you. What? I said, that's you. And he looks at the board at 1,000,002, signs the ticket. Well, an hour later, I've run into him in the hall. I said, Wayne, what was that about? It's about me getting on the phone tonight. Never missed a beat. Never missed a beat.
I think Wayne's one of those guys who is impossible to really fluster in this game.
Can't rattle him.
He's been broke, he's been rich, he's been married, he's been divorced, he's won
Again and
derbies, he's lost horses to claim. He's seen it all, and continues to be, one of the icons in the game. I don't see him ever retiring. I think, as he told me one day when I was doing an interview with him, I'll probably just keel over in the saddle and they'll harrow me under that way, and that's
That
how
may
I'll be
be-
buried.
That may be true.
I know you've been, and you mentioned a little bit, we talked about the yearling sales because obviously you're the head of the auction team there. And we mentioned the OBS sales, the 2-year-old sales, and then Barrett's in Southern California, which I miss desperately. I loved that sale.
Me too.
Would you say that there's a real difference to what you do in the elements of what you do because of the breeze show factor at the 2-year-old sales, or is it basically the same for you in terms of assessing and delivering on that customer service that you have to deliver at every one of these sales?
It's a bit different. You have to hold hands a bit more in the 2-year-old sales, I think. The breeze show, while it's very exciting and you can learn a lot, they can be dangerous. And are they going to come back? Is there going to be some kind of an issue with a horse? So I think because of that, it takes a little bit more time. Because the horse is closer to the race, it's almost more fun for me because I love racing so much, and I just think that could be the horse. I mean, Corniche. I mean, you kind of looked at him and said, "Wow, this is the real deal, whatever he costs." And
I love the fact that you're still saying "wow" after so many horses that have rolled underneath your eyes and your nostrils and your gavel at the sales. I guess that's why you're still doing it. It still carries a great deal of wonder and excitement for you.
It sure does. It does. I can't wait for March 15th, go to OBS, get ready again.
Hope it's hot as hell.
Me too. Me too.
I do want to end it on this note, Ryan, and I could talk to you for a much longer time, but I don't want to overtax the welcome that you provided. You've always seemed to me a really optimistic person, a real glass is half full type of person. What's your vision for the next decade in racing? Are we holding our own? Are we kind of dipping a little bit and need to adjust some things, or what's our trajectory from your perspective?
Well, I think we need to adjust some things. I think we need to get a better handle on the drug situation. There's a lot of money moving out now in other markets, not this industry, but others. I think the sales have been terrific lately. I would like to get the confidence of the buyers back a little more. And I've talked to some guys that are new in the business. I'm a little afraid to do this right now and afraid to do that. And I get that. And again, it's all about integrity to me. And I think we have to work harder as we all think we are. Terry certainly is, and you are, to get that feeling of confidence back that everybody's being taken care of.
Do you have a Derby pick this year yet?
Not yet.
Smart man. Smart man. Ryan Mahan, thank you for joining us it's this afternoon, but people will watch this at any given time. It's been a true pleasure. Like I said, when I began this conversation, it's easy to talk to a friend of mine, and it's a little weird sometimes to do it on an interviewing type of format, but you've made it easy. And I really do appreciate it and wish you all the best for the rest of this chilly week, which is getting warmer here in Kentucky, and we'll see you down in Ocala.
My pleasure, my friend. Be safe.
Thank you. That's Ryan Mahan. Thank you all. We'll see each other at the races. Bye-bye now.